Hello, friends. So this month in the School of Transformation, we're talking about how narcissists kind of shape and mold your self-image to be so negative. They want you to view yourself in such a negative, limiting way, right? And some of the core wounds that they inflict that cause you to view yourself that way are the wounds that I am not enough, I'm unworthy, I'm not lovable, nothing I do is right, there's something wrong with me. And so we're talking about this, right? We're talking about how to upgrade your self-image, because if you don't, you can be out of the relationship with narcissists and your self-image is kind of like the autopilot on a plane. Once it's programmed, it's just designed to, make that your reality. So we're talking about this, and somebody asked in the chat box, why do they do that? Why would a narcissistic parent, or a narcissistic spouse, why would they want you to think so poorly of yourself? Why do they want you to have such a negative, ugly self-image? And I remember one time, one of my clients told me, she was like, yeah, and he was telling me how awful I was. And I turned around and I was like, then why did you want to be with me? You want to be with me, and yet this is who you're saying I am. So it doesn't make sense. It's almost like they want to be with you, but they also want you to have a really horrible self-image. Why? The reality is it has less to do with you and more to do with them. Okay. Narcissists act like they have a healthy self-image of themselves. And when I talk to people and I tell them that they don't, a lot of times some of my clients will be like, Michele, but he or she acts like they really have all this confidence and they really see themselves in such a positive light. But isn't it true that the most confident people, I'm not talking about arrogant, I'm talking about people that just really believe in themselves and have that self-confidence and self-love, they don't have to go around smearing other people. They don't have to insult or talk bad about other people in order to feel good, because they fuel themselves from within. Narcissists don't do that. They do not fuel themselves from within. In order for a narcissist to feel good about his self or herself, it has to be at the expense of someone else, or because they've smeared somebody else and they're constantly measuring where they are in comparison to other people. In other words, for a narcissist to feel good about himself or herself in the relationship, they have to feel better than you. Now, this is a little confusing, because then people are like, well, then why don't they just pick somebody that's worthless? Because they don't do that, okay? They do not pick worthless people. I say all the time that narcissists have good taste, right? The people that I've had the privilege of working with are some of the most amazing people I've ever gotten to meet. People that have been through narcissistic abuse, whether in childhood or with a significant other, or sadly both. So again, this goes back to how they view themselves. To pick somebody worthless, that doesn't do anything for them, because what are they going to get from that person? Nothing, because that person has nothing to offer. And a narcissist basically is kind of like a leech, like a parasite. They pick someone of value, but they want you to see yourself in a bad light for two reasons. One, so they can feel better, but also because they need somebody to carry how they see themselves. When a narcissist feels shame, instead of working through their shame or even acknowledging that the shame exists within their body, they fling it at the other person. They provoke that other person to feel shame, and they're like, oh, see, I'm not feeling shame. He or she is. I feel better. And so they need somebody to carry all of the ugly in them that they don't want to acknowledge that they have. And, if you're wondering if this is true, that the fact that they, need to feel or see you in a negative light in order to feel better about themselves, think about it. In the relationship, if you are in a relationship with somebody that's narcissistic, did you ever feel like you were co-creators in the relationship? Or did it feel more like you were competitors? Like there was some kind of weird competition that you didn't really want to be a part of, but you were constantly faced with. And that's because they are always competing. They need somebody to constantly measure themselves up against. That being said, if this is resonating and you're like, oh my goodness, like this is exactly what's going on in my relationship, or it's what has gone on in my family relationships, or with a significant other. A mistake that a lot of people fall into after they see this and they start acknowledging the fact that, you know, the narcissist is doing this, they then fall into the trap of trying to convince the narcissist of who they really are. And that's because if you've been raised, especially if you've been raised with a narcissistic parent, they've made you feel like you're not allowed to have your reality unless they agree with you, right? There's always been only one perspective, and that's theirs. And they want you to think that you can only see yourself in a positive light if they see you that way as well. And you'll know you're stuck in this if you are constantly trying to explain, over-explain to the narcissist, trying to point out the reality, trying to point out the truth. Meanwhile, they're just constantly denying the reality. Okay, that can be like a never-ending loop. If you are waiting for the narcissist to see who you really are so that you can give yourself permission to be you, you're setting yourself up for failure. Okay, the real way to reshape your self-image and to see yourself as you really are is to start valuing your perspective. It's to start learning to see life through your eyes, even if the narcissist in your life disagrees with you. In other words, they've taught you that there's only one perspective, but you have to teach yourself that there are two. And that means if the narcissist says something to you like, you know, you're such a selfish person because maybe you actually were taking care of one of your needs, right? And they want you to think that you have to revolve 24/7 around them. So they say something that they know will hurt you because you don't want to be a selfish person, right? So they'll say, oh, you're so selfish doing that. If you find yourself trying to convince them that you're not selfish because, you know, you actually have to eat and spend a long time and food is like necessary for life. That's just an exaggerated example. If you find yourself defending yourself, then you are not trusting your perspective. Okay, now we would explain in a healthy relationship to somebody, but we have to understand this is not a healthy relationship. Narcissists do not see your perspective. So when you're trying to over-explain who you really are, you are giving energy. You feel depleted and they feel as if they've just refueled. So the way to handle that when you respect that there are two perspectives is to say, you're allowed to think that. I'm good. I'm happy with what I'm doing. Thanks for sharing how you feel about this, but you know, I feel good. And you stay in your perspective, even if they disagree. The more you strengthen your perspective, the more you listen to yourself, the more you will start reconnecting to you. Okay, because narcissistic abuse causes you to chase their understanding, trying to connect with them. It's exhausting. But the more you try to connect with them, the more you're abandoning yourself because your inner self is wanting and needing things and you're totally, you know, ignoring that, trying to get through to somebody that just doesn't want to hear you. So when you see yourself in that pattern, okay, once you understand that narcissists don't want to see your value, you are a valuable person. But they don't want to see it because in their twisted prism of reality, by seeing your value, they think they're lowering themselves. So they will never see your value. They will never let you know they see your value. But some ways that it slips through is the fact that they often imitate you. The things you once cared about, they care about. Things that, qualities that you had, they suddenly have. Now, it doesn't seem authentic. It almost seems like they're faking it, which they are. They're imitating you. But those are the ways that they inadvertently let you know how valuable you are without telling you that you're valuable. Regardless of whether they inadvertently do that or not, you can start seeing your value. You can start seeing your perspective and living in harmony with it, and you will start feeling empowered, even if the other person never changes. Even if they stay negative and seeing life horribly, doesn't mean that you have to suffer because that's how they choose to see you. That's a perspective, that's not reality. You can start seeing yourself as you really are. And if you need help and you're struggling and you just feel like it's too hard and it's a losing battle, join us in the Thriver School of Transformation, because this month, that's what we're talking about. We're deconstructing the self-image that narcissists try to mold and force you to stay in. And we're really learning reprogramming tools to help strengthen the authentic self so that you can live life as you really are.